Captain Ethan Rains adjusted the collar of his suit as the shuttle descended toward the sprawling city of Zylara. From the viewport, he could see towers of crystal-like structures stretching far into the sky, their surfaces shimmering in colors he had never seen before. The air outside was thick with a faint purple haze, and the gravity of this world was slightly stronger than Earth's, tugging at his movements even through the gravity compensation in his suit. He had been briefed on the Xylarians. Their empire was vast, technologically superior, and according to every report, brutally efficient in dealing with outsiders. But the one name that had everyone in the Interstellar Council on edge was that of Princess Lysara. She was young, brilliant, and feared across the galaxy for her sharp mind and unyielding temperament. No human had yet faced her without faltering. Ethan had faced pressure before. He had stared down pirates in asteroid belts, survived uncharted wormholes, and negotiated peace between rival colonies on the brink of war. But this was different. This was first contact at the highest level, and the fate of humanity's reputation rested on his composure. The shuttle touched down on a landing pad that seemed almost impossibly high above the main city. Guards of angular metallic armor stepped aside as the shuttle doors hissed open. Ethan's first step on Zylara was cautious but confident. He felt the eyes of the entire palace guard, and perhaps more. The weight of the Xylarian Empire seemed to press upon him like a living presence. A soft hum echoed around him, almost musical, as the corridor leading to the palace opened. Ethan followed the escort in silence, noting every detail. The walls pulsed with light, reacting to their presence. Even the floor beneath his feet seemed alive, subtly shifting as if breathing. It was beautiful, intimidating, and entirely alien. Finally, they arrived at the throne room. It was enormous, wider and taller than any human structure Ethan had seen. The ceiling disappeared into a kaleidoscope of colors, and at the center, seated on a throne that seemed to float above the ground, was Princess Lysara. Her skin glimmered with a pearlescent hue, her eyes sharp and calculating. She studied Ethan as if he were an experiment rather than a guest. "You are Captain Ethan Rains," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made it clear she was used to control. "The human who smiles at the impossible." Ethan bowed slightly. A gesture of respect, but not submission. "I am. And you must be Princess Lysara. It is an honor to meet you." The princess's gaze hardened. She rose slowly, every movement deliberate. "Do not mistake this hall for courtesy. Here, weakness is noticed, exploited, and punished. Many have come before you and failed simply because they believed they could face me as equals." Ethan's lips curled into a small, unflinching smile. "I do not fear failure. I fear not trying at all." A murmur of surprise passed through the guards. Ethan could see the flicker of uncertainty in Lysara's eyes, subtle but unmistakable. No human had ever responded this way. She paused for a moment, and then her expression sharpened into one of intrigue. "I see," she said finally, stepping down from her throne. "You have courage, or perhaps arrogance. Let us test which it is." Without another word, she gestured, and the walls of the room shifted, revealing a chamber that looked nothing like a throne room. Instead, it resembled a labyrinth of platforms, energy fields, and moving obstacles. Ethan understood immediately. This was not just a test of diplomacy, it was a test of human capability, endurance, and intellect. Lysara's eyes glinted. "You will navigate this. Fail, and you will leave with nothing but the knowledge of your inadequacy. Succeed, and you will gain my attention. That is all." Ethan studied the chamber, noting the shifting patterns of light and the energy barriers. The floor was not solid everywhere, and some platforms moved in unpredictable sequences. Yet he could see patterns. He could see possibilities. Humans were masters of improvisation, and he intended to demonstrate that today. He stepped forward, keeping his smile steady. He could feel the princess's gaze, sharp and unwavering, tracking every movement. The first leap was tricky, requiring precise timing, but he calculated the momentum and landed safely. He did not rush, but he did not hesitate either. Each obstacle was a puzzle, and his mind worked faster than the mechanisms themselves. As he progressed, Lyra walked alongside the edge of the chamber, her expression unreadable. Occasionally, she would change the pattern of the platforms or activate a sudden energy field. Every time, Ethan adapted, finding a path that was both safe and efficient. "You are different," she said finally, her voice carrying a note of curiosity. "Other species crumble under pressure. Humans, you endure, you think, you adjust. And still you smile." Ethan glanced at her without breaking his stride. "A smile is not weakness. It is understanding that fear does not solve challenges." The princess stopped, folding her arms. "Most humans would have fallen long before this point. Most would be panicking, pleading, or breaking under the stress. You are an anomaly." Ethan reached the final platform. A shimmering barrier blocked the exit, and he realized that this was the final test. It was a riddle of sorts, a sequence of energy nodes that had to be activated in the correct order. The room would punish mistakes with painful shocks. He crouched, studying the rhythm of the energy pulses, the timing of the shifts, and the faint vibrations in the platform beneath his feet. He smiled again, a quiet expression of calm. Then he moved. Step by step. He activated the nodes in sequence, feeling the energy hum beneath his hands, sensing the feedback and adjusting instinctively. When the final node glowed bright, the barrier dissolved. Ethan exhaled slowly, not triumphant but satisfied. He had passed the test without injury, without hesitation, without fear. He turned to Lyra, expecting perhaps a grudging acknowledgement. Instead, she merely observed him, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she nodded once. "Very well, human. You are tolerable, perhaps interesting." Ethan offered a respectful bow. "I am glad to be of interest. I hope our meeting is only the beginning of understanding between our species." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. She had not expected a human to handle her test, let alone remain composed. "You underestimate how few can survive this chamber. You apparently do not fear death, humiliation, or failure. Curious." "Understanding and respect guide my actions," Ethan said simply. "Fear is not a tool I rely on. It is an obstacle to clarity." Lyra's lips twitched, almost imperceptibly, as though she wanted to smile but would not allow herself. The guards whispered among themselves. Ethan, a human, had achieved what none before him had. He had faced the princess without flinching, without submission, without losing composure. The princess finally spoke again. "Tomorrow you will meet my council. They will attempt to challenge you in ways you cannot anticipate. Be prepared, Captain. Or perhaps unprepared. Humans are unpredictable. That may be your greatest strength." Ethan inclined his head. "I will meet them as I meet all challenges, calmly, openly, and with a smile." Lyra's gaze lingered on him a moment longer before she turned, floating gracefully back toward her throne. Her guards reformed, and Ethan was escorted to a chamber for rest. The walls of the palace pulsed softly in the evening light, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ethan looked around, noting the alien beauty of the architecture, the hum of energy that filled the air, and the sheer intelligence required to create such a world. Yet despite all of this, he felt no fear. He had faced the unknown before, and in this moment, he understood a truth that humans carried naturally. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. That night, as he rested in the chamber, Ethan thought about the princess. Lysara was unlike any leader he had encountered, proud, brilliant, and merciless. Yet there was something in her that intrigued him, something beyond intimidation and power. Humans could read intentions, detect subtleties in behavior, and respond with insight rather than brute force. Perhaps that was what made her uncertain. Perhaps that was what made humans remarkable. And so, as the twin moons of Zylara rose high above the city, Ethan closed his eyes with a quiet smile. Tomorrow would be another challenge. But he was ready. He always was. The princess, meanwhile, stood on her balcony, gazing at the city lights. For the first time in her life, someone had faced her without fear or submission. She could not yet define what she felt about the human, only that he had stirred something unfamiliar, curiosity, and curiosity, she knew, could be dangerous. The next morning, the palace corridors buzzed with quiet energy. Ethan walked with measured steps, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. Today, he would meet Princess Lysara's council, a group renowned across the galaxy for their intelligence, cunning, and unrelenting scrutiny of outsiders. Each member had a reputation for challenging negotiators, diplomats, and explorers in ways no human had survived before. Lysara met him at the grand doors to the council chamber. Her gaze was sharp, her posture regal. She did not smile this time. Instead, she studied him silently, as if measuring his worth before introducing him to the true test. "Captain Rains," she said, her voice precise and commanding. "The council awaits. They will challenge your mind, your agility, and your understanding of both our worlds. I suggest you proceed with care, or whatever passes for caution in your species." Ethan inclined his head politely. "I will do my best, Princess." She gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod, then gestured toward the chamber doors. As they opened, Ethan saw a long room illuminated by soft, shifting lights. At its center, a circular table hovered slightly above the floor, and seated around it were beings of varied shapes, colors, and forms. Some had translucent skin, others multiple limbs, and a few had appendages that defied human imagination. Their eyes glimmered with intelligence and challenge. Lysara gestured for him to step forward. "They will speak, Captain. Answer them truthfully, or with the wisdom you see fit. Fail to satisfy them, and you leave this room humiliated." Ethan stepped forward calmly. He had faced hostile crowds before, had argued with beings far more experienced than himself, yet nothing could unsettle him now. The council's presence was impressive, but humans had an advantage: adaptability. The first council member, a being with 3 elongated arms and eyes set in a triangular pattern, leaned forward. Its voice was like a chime, soft yet demanding. "You claim humanity is capable of reason. Demonstrate it. Solve this. A device here must be activated in sequence. Each error triggers a defense protocol. You have only one attempt." Before Ethan could respond, the device hummed to life in front of him. It was a complex panel of glowing nodes, connected by streams of energy. Ethan studied the patterns carefully, noticing subtle shifts in light that suggested a rhythm. Humans were used to observation, to deduction, to reading patterns in chaos. He smiled lightly, confident but focused. He began pressing the nodes in a sequence that felt instinctively correct, adjusting his timing based on the energy flows. Sparks danced dangerously close at times, but he did not flinch. Each node activated correctly until the final one glowed brightly. The defense protocol remained silent. The council murmured among themselves. Ethan met their gaze steadily, acknowledging their challenge without fear. Lysara's eyes sparkled with interest. For the first time, she sensed a glimmer of genuine respect, not just from her council, but potentially from herself. "Interesting," Lysara said. Your species' instinct for observation serves you well. The next challenge was physical. Another council member, smaller and more wiry, activated a zero-gravity chamber adjacent to the council room. Ethan was lifted into the chamber, floating among a series of moving platforms and energy beams. The Xylarians watched as he maneuvered through, adapting to the shifting orientation and timing each leap with precision. Unlike others, who relied on brute force or predictable patterns, Ethan used intuition, balance, and momentum. One particularly difficult section involved dodging beams that pulsed randomly. Humans were capable of improvisation, and Ethan adjusted mid-air, redirecting his momentum to land safely on the next platform. The chamber's systems, designed to punish hesitation, rewarded his calm decisiveness. Lyra tilted her head. Most humans would panic here. Yet you move like one born to flight. Ethan landed gracefully. I would not call it flight. I would call it observation and adaptation. The council exchanged whispers, impressed despite themselves. Their next test was mental and political, a simulated negotiation with a hostile faction of Xylarian subordinates. Ethan was placed in a holographic environment, surrounded by beings programmed to resist and provoke him. They began with sharp accusations, threats of war, and false claims of human weakness. Ethan listened patiently. He did not raise his voice, nor did he show anger or fear. Instead, he asked questions, seeking clarity and understanding. Humans had an innate advantage here, empathy and insight into behavior. By observing the holographic aggressors carefully, he identified patterns in their responses, predicting their next moves, and redirecting the conversation toward compromise. The simulation ended without conflict. The council watched in stunned silence as Ethan calmly negotiated peace between the virtual factions. Lyra's lips twitched in a subtle acknowledgement. You handle chaos differently than I expected. Perhaps, Ethan replied, because I see it as an opportunity, not a threat. Lyra, intrigued and frustrated, decided to escalate the test. You have navigated physical danger, logic puzzles, and negotiation trials. Few could claim such success, yet you have not faced the final challenge. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? Her expression hardened. A test of moral choice. Many of your species have clever minds, strong bodies, and keen observation, but few understand the weight of ethical decisions in the face of survival. You will be placed in a scenario where you must choose between personal gain and the lives of many. Your choice will define the human I see before me. He nodded solemnly. I will act as I believe is right. The council activated the final simulation. Ethan found himself on a bridge of a spacecraft, surrounded by Xylarian refugees. Their ship was failing and 2 escape pods were available, but only enough for some. A third pod was locked by a code requiring sacrifice or clever thinking to unlock. The system was designed to force humans into selfish or hasty choices. Ethan paused. He observed the panic, the fear, and the cries of those aboard. Yet he did not panic. He thought through the scenario, understanding the technology and the systems in place. With a calm mind, he identified a manual override hidden in the control panel, something the Xylarians had not anticipated. Using it, he unlocked all 3 pods, saving everyone without sacrificing himself. The council was silent. Such a choice was impossible for many. Even humans often faltered when survival was at stake. Yet Ethan had demonstrated creativity, courage, and moral clarity. Lyra finally spoke, her voice measured but tinged with something unspoken. Admiration. You survive every trial. You outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast. And yet, you do so with patience and humor. Ethan smiled lightly. A challenge is easier when approached calmly. Humor is simply a reminder that fear does not control us. The princess's eyes flickered. She could not deny the truth in his words. The human before her was unlike any being she had encountered. He did not rely on technology, intimidation, or fear. He relied on observation, intelligence, and integrity, the qualities she had long considered human weaknesses, yet here they were, proving otherwise. "You are remarkable," she admitted softly, almost to herself. Then, louder, she addressed the council. "You will all take note. This human is not to be underestimated. His species may possess strengths we have yet to comprehend." The council members, some still wary, nodded in acknowledgement. Ethan had won more than survival. He had earned respect. The day ended with Lyra walking Ethan back to his quarters. The palace seemed quieter now, the corridors less intimidating, as though even the walls recognized the shift in perception. "You smiled through every trial," she said finally, her tone curious rather than commanding. "Few can do that." "What is it about your species that allows such resilience?" Ethan considered her question. "Humans have learned to face uncertainty constantly. We adapt, we improvise, and we protect one another. Our strength is not in domination, but in understanding and persistence. A smile is simply the outward sign of that confidence." Lyra's eyes narrowed, thoughtful. Confidence or arrogance? "Perhaps both," Ethan said with a quiet chuckle. "But only when arrogance becomes a tool for learning, not destruction." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a brief, almost imperceptible smile. It was not the smile of a ruler, commanding fear and respect, but of someone intrigued, challenged, and perhaps unsettled. Ethan's calm demeanor and moral clarity had done more than survive tests. They had challenged assumptions about humanity. The Xylarians were brilliant, yes, but their brilliance often lacked the unpredictability and intuition of human nature. A species that could adapt and improvise under pressure could not be dismissed as weak. That night, Ethan rested with a sense of quiet accomplishment. He had passed trials meant to intimidate, challenge, and even unsettle him. Yet he had done so not through force or deception, but through calm observation, moral integrity, and confidence in his abilities. He understood now that human strength lay in their unity, their creativity, and their ability to face the unknown without surrendering to fear. Far above, in her chambers, Lyra stared at the stars. She could not deny that the human before her was exceptional. Perhaps humanity was not as primitive or weak as she had been led to believe. Perhaps there was a spark in them that even her empire's technology could not extinguish, and that thought was both unsettling and fascinating. The calm that followed Ethan's trials in the council chamber was deceptive. The Xylarian Empire was vast, with factions that often acted independently, and not all of them welcomed humans. Some saw them as weak, others as unpredictable. Yet there were those who feared the consequences of underestimating a species capable of surviving the impossible. Lyra had been unusually quiet that morning as she escorted Ethan through the palace corridors. Normally regal and composed, she now seemed thoughtful, her mind turning over questions she had not expected to consider. Humans were not only clever and brave, they were unyielding, unflinching, and remarkably adaptable. "You have made an impression," she said quietly, her voice carrying more curiosity than authority. "Some within my empire will not accept your presence easily. They believe your species should not be allowed near our politics or technology." Ethan glanced at her calmly. "Fear of what is not understood is common in all species. I do not expect to be accepted immediately. I only aim to be understood." Her eyes softened slightly. "You have a patience most humans lack. That patience may be your greatest weapon." Their conversation was interrupted as alarms echoed through the palace. Red and orange lights bathed the corridors, and a mechanical voice warned of unauthorized activity in the lower sectors of the city. Lysara's posture stiffened instantly. A faction attempting to sabotage the central hub. They seek to provoke war with the humans. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Then we stop them. Quickly. Lysara motioned for him to follow as they ran through a maze of corridors and lifts that descended into the lower city. The gravity here felt heavier, the air thick with tension and smoke. Below, the city was alive with chaos, guards running, citizens evacuating, and strange energy pulses flaring in the streets. "This is more than a test," Lysara said, her voice steady but urgent. "They intend to discredit you publicly to make humans appear weak." Ethan scanned the environment. He noted the positions of guards, the layout of the streets, and the probable targets of the saboteurs. Humans had a natural advantage in improvisation, and he intended to use it. "Then we move smartly, not by force alone, but by strategy." Lysara tilted her head, studying him. "And you trust that your species can navigate this chaos without succumbing?" "I have no other choice," he replied simply. "Fear will not guide me. Observation, logic, and decisive action will." Together, they approached the first cluster of saboteurs. These beings moved quickly, their energy weapons crackling as they attempted to breach a power generator critical to the city's stability. Lysara drew her own weapon, a sleek plasma staff, ready to engage. But Ethan did not draw a weapon. Instead, he assessed the timing of their movements, the layout of their equipment, and the reactions of the guards nearby. With a swift gesture, he redirected a guard's movement, causing one saboteur to stumble into a containment field. Then he threw a small device of his own design, a human improvisation, that emitted a pulse temporarily disabling the saboteur's weapons. The humans and Xylarian guards moved in perfect coordination, rounding up the attackers before serious damage occurred. Lysara's eyes widened slightly. She had expected human courage, perhaps even skill, but not ingenuity. Humans often relied on brute force, yet Ethan had neutralized multiple threats without harm or reckless action. The saboteurs were only the beginning. Word had spread quickly and more factions appeared, each attempting to disrupt communication, energy flow, and security. Ethan and Lysara worked in tandem, blending human improvisation with Xylarian precision. Every move Ethan made was calculated, not from training alone, but from instinct honed over years of surviving impossible situations. During a particularly dangerous encounter, Ethan found a collapsing bridge leading to a key data hub. Several Xylarian guards were trapped on one side, with enemies closing in. He grabbed the nearest cables, using momentum and human ingenuity to swing across, creating a temporary path for the guards. They crossed safely, astonished at the humans' quick thinking. Lysara, impressed despite herself, muttered, "Your species adapts in ways even we cannot predict." Ethan did not respond immediately. His attention was on the city below, where energy pulses threatened critical infrastructure. Calmly, he directed both humans and Xylarians, assigning tasks, redirecting resources, and improvising solutions for failures caused by the sabotage. Hours passed, yet Ethan never faltered. Even as fatigue set in, he remained precise, observant, and decisive. Lysara noticed that, unlike other species she had encountered, Ethan did not act from pride or desperation. He acted from understanding. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability stemmed from creativity, empathy, and persistence, not recklessness. By the time the final wave of saboteurs attempted to breach the main energy grid, Ethan had already anticipated their movements. He had created a diversion, lured them into containment traps, and disabled their weapons with minimal risk. The attack ended as quickly as it began, leaving the city intact and the citizens safe. Lysara finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She had seen her empire's finest guards, strategists, and diplomats struggle against lesser threats. Yet this human had orchestrated a response that was both elegant and effective. She felt a mixture of admiration and unease. "You have done more than survive," she said quietly. "You have proven that your species can face the chaos of war without succumbing to panic or violence alone. That is remarkable." Ethan nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Humans have learned that survival is not just about strength or weapons. It is about observation, adaptation, and working with others." Lyra studied him, realizing something that unsettled her deeply. "You understand collaboration in ways my empire sometimes forgets. You combine logic, courage, and moral clarity. It is disarming." Ethan smiled lightly. "Disarming is often more effective than confrontation. Fear can be managed. Violence can be avoided. Understanding. That is the true advantage." The aftermath of the attack left the city shaken but intact. The council, previously skeptical, now regarded Ethan with genuine respect. Even some of the factions that had opposed humans now viewed them as more capable than anticipated. Lyra, walking beside Ethan as he inspected the damage, seemed quieter than usual, her thoughts turning inward. "You have changed perceptions today," she said softly. "Perhaps humanity is not as weak as I assumed, or perhaps I have underestimated them entirely." Ethan glanced at her. "It is not weakness or strength alone that defines a species. It is how they face the impossible, together and with purpose." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then humans may indeed be remarkable." The evening brought a rare quiet over the city. Ethan returned to his quarters, reflecting on the day's events. He had faced not only the Council's trials, but real threats that endangered life and stability. Through it all, he had remained calm, resourceful, and morally grounded. He understood now that human ingenuity was not just intelligence or technology. It was adaptability, creativity, and the courage to do what was right, even when it seemed impossible. Lyra, meanwhile, watched the stars from her balcony. The human had not only survived her empire's tests, but had confronted danger, and emerged not only unscathed, but respected. For the first time, she considered that humans were not simply another species to control or study. They were potential allies, capable of surprising brilliance. Her thoughts returned to Ethan, standing amidst chaos, yet unshaken. Smiling as if the world's threats were merely puzzles to solve. She could not deny that the human had earned more than respect. He had earned her genuine curiosity. Tomorrow she would bring him before the highest council of the Xylarian Empire, where decisions would shape the future of interstellar relations. But tonight she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Perhaps, she thought, humans were not to be intimidated or dismissed. Perhaps their strength was something her empire could learn from. And perhaps Ethan Raines was only the beginning. The sun of Xylara had barely risen when Ethan and Princess Lyra arrived at the Grand Council Hall. The massive chamber was more imposing than any Ethan had seen. Light filtered through crystalline walls, creating prismatic patterns that danced across the floor. At the center, the High Council awaited, a gathering of Xylarian leaders, each a master of strategy, diplomacy, and power. Lyra's eyes met Ethan's. "This will be the true test, Captain. You will face not only intellect and cunning, but politics, tradition, and prejudice. My empire has long doubted humanity. Today you will either prove your worth or confirm their fears." Ethan nodded calmly. "Then let us proceed with clarity and purpose. Fear and arrogance will not serve us here." The chamber doors opened, and the council members regarded him with suspicion. Ethan noticed the subtle signals, the narrowing of eyes, the tightness of posture, the way some leaned forward as if anticipating his failure. It was a room designed to intimidate. Lyra raised her hand. Captain Rains has proven himself through trials that none of your predecessors could survive. He has demonstrated courage, intellect, and adaptability. Now, I present him to you for evaluation. The council did not respond immediately. Their leader, a tall figure with translucent skin and multiple eyes, finally spoke. Humans have been seen as primitive, impulsive, and incapable of understanding our complexities. Captain Rains has survived tests, yes, but he is one individual. What of his species? Do they share his ingenuity? Ethan stepped forward confidently. I cannot speak for all humans, but I can demonstrate our principles. We adapt, we learn, and we face challenges with observation, creativity, and moral clarity. Our strength is in understanding, collaboration, and courage, the council murmured. One member, an elder known for their ruthlessness in interstellar politics, leaned forward. You claim understanding, yet you are still an outsider. You do not know the nuances of our empire, the history, or the grudges that shape decisions here. How do you intend to navigate that? Ethan smiled lightly, steady and unshaken. Every society has patterns, traditions, and motivations. Observation, patience, and dialogue allow insight. I may not know your history fully, but I can respect it, learn from it, and act accordingly. Fear and arrogance will only blind me to truth. The council exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Lyra's gaze softened slightly. She knew Ethan was different. He combined human creativity with a moral clarity that even her empire sometimes lacked. Suddenly, a message arrived. A rogue faction in the outer colonies had seized control of a supply station critical to interstellar stability. Their goal was to ignite conflict between humans and Xylarians, forcing a war that could devastate both civilizations. Lyra turned to Ethan. This is not a test. It is reality. You will see how your principles function in the chaos of actual threat. Ethan's expression remained calm. Then we act quickly. Observation first, strategy second, courage always. Within minutes, they were aboard a sleek Xylarian vessel, speeding toward the outer colonies. Lyra piloted with precision, while Ethan studied the situation. Satellite scans revealed heavily armed forces and defensive barriers surrounding the station. A direct assault would be catastrophic. Instead, Ethan proposed a different plan. We do not attack. We deceive, negotiate, and exploit their assumptions. They expect humans to act recklessly. We will not. Lyra raised an eyebrow but followed his lead. Ethan's strategy relied on subtlety, creating holographic duplicates of the vessel, sending false signals, and using the rogue faction's own communication network against them. He also identified a weak point in the station's defenses, a power conduit that could be temporarily disabled without loss of life. The plan was daring but precise. As the rogue faction scrambled to respond, Ethan coordinated with Lyra, guiding the ship through shifting defenses and using their ingenuity to outmaneuver their opponents. Each move was calculated, yet adaptable to the unpredictable tactics of the enemy. When they reached the power conduit, Ethan acted quickly. He disabled the system, causing temporary confusion among the rogue forces. Lyra's crew moved in to secure the station, but Ethan continued to monitor, anticipating every counterattack. His calm confidence inspired the Xylarians, who had never seen such unshakable composure under direct threat. The rogue faction, expecting fear or aggression, found neither. They were confronted with logic, strategy, and an unyielding determination that left them no choice but to surrender. The station was secured, lives were preserved, and conflict was avoided. Back in the Grand Council Hall, Ethan presented the results. He explained the tactics, reasoning, and principles behind every decision. The council listened, some in disbelief, others in awe. They had witnessed not just human courage, but human ingenuity applied with precision and moral clarity. Lyra stood beside him, her usual composure tempered by admiration. "You have demonstrated more than survival," she said. "You have proven that your species can face the unknown, adapt to chaos, and act with integrity. That is strength." The council leader, previously skeptical, spoke. "Humans are no longer a species to underestimate. Captain Rains has shown qualities that even we struggle to emulate: foresight, adaptability, and moral judgment. Perhaps we have been blind." Ethan inclined his head. "Recognition is not the goal. Cooperation, understanding, and shared purpose are. Humanity seeks partnership, not dominance." Lyra turned to him, a faint smile forming. "And yet, you have earned respect, not through force, but through wisdom and courage. That is a lesson our empire will not forget." The council deliberated, and when they emerged, their verdict was clear. Humanity would be officially recognized as an independent and respected power within the interstellar community. Trust and alliances were extended, and Ethan's efforts were cited as the catalyst for a new era of cooperation. As the chamber emptied, Lyra walked beside Ethan. "You smile even in the face of war and politics. Why?" Ethan looked at her, calm and thoughtful. "Because fear does not serve understanding. Courage, observation, and patience do. A smile is simply a reflection of that confidence." Lyra considered his words, realizing that this human had changed not just perceptions but expectations. Humans were not to be intimidated, dismissed, or underestimated. They were to be respected, learned from, and perhaps even admired. Later, as night fell over Zylara, the city lights reflecting against the crystalline towers, Lyra invited Ethan to her balcony. The twin moons cast a gentle glow, and for a moment, the weight of politics and responsibility fell away. "You are different from anyone I have ever met," she said softly. "You teach without preaching, lead without commanding, and act without fear. It is unsettling." Ethan smiled. "It is simply the way humans face challenges. We adapt, we observe, we act. We do not rely solely on power or technology. We rely on ingenuity, collaboration, and integrity." Lyra's expression softened. For the first time, she allowed herself to see him not just as a human, but as an individual worthy of admiration. "Perhaps humanity is more than I believed. Perhaps your people have strengths we cannot replicate." Ethan nodded. "And perhaps our species can learn from each other, building a future together rather than apart." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the moons rise over the city. It was a symbol of a new era, one forged through courage, wisdom, and respect. Lyra finally turned to him with a genuine smile. "Captain Ethan Rains, you have shown my empire that strength is not always about weapons or technology. Sometimes it is in the calm mind, the steady heart, and the willingness to do what is right." Ethan returned the smile, simple and quiet, but full of conviction. "And sometimes it is in a smile itself." The twin moons reflected off the crystalline towers, and for the first time, the Zylarians saw humanity not as a species to be controlled, but as a partner, capable of greatness beyond expectation. Ethan had not only survived, he had taught, inspired, and reshaped an empire's understanding of strength. As the night deepened, Lyra knew that their story was only beginning. Humans had earned respect through ingenuity, morality, and courage, and one human, Captain Ethan Rains, had proven that sometimes the greatest power lay not in dominance, but in calm, unwavering confidence and a simple smile. And in that moment, both human and Zylarian realized that the galaxy was larger, more interconnected, and more full of possibility than anyone had imagined. Humanity had earned its place, not through conquest or intimidation, but through heart, mind, and courage. The stars above twinkled with promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new alliances, and perhaps new threats. But humanity had already proven its strength. They would face the future with ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet confidence that had carried Ethan through impossible trials. Lyra turned once more toward Ethan. "You have changed my Empire's view of humanity, and perhaps you have changed me as well." Ethan smiled, steady and warm. "Perhaps we have both learned something. Strength is not measured by power alone, Princess. It is measured by courage, understanding, and the choices we make in the face of the impossible." And with that, the night settled over Zylara. The city sparkled beneath twin moons. The Empire awakened to new possibilities, and one human's calm confidence, the smile that never faltered, had become a beacon of hope, respect, and a future forged together.